Hey guys, we're going to discuss problem solving. This is something very near and dear to my heart, and something I've been doing for 15, 20 years, probably most of my life, in varying disciplines and with different levels of success for sure. In school, we're not really taught problem solving, unless it's some weird wax on, wax off Mr. Miyagi type way. Really, when I think about it, what we learn in school is how to answer questions. We're given a set of information with then the ask for an answer. You know, the common math problem is you're on a train traveling at 50 miles an hour, heading 150 miles an hour. How long until you arrive? Which starts at 10 p.m., whatever. And really what we're trying to do is apply a set of rules or conditions or use a set of tools or apply information we know to provide an answer. But in reality, and when you get into life, problems aren't solved that way. You're not generally just asked a question with all the information you need and you provide an answer. Problems are a little bit more complicated than that. So let's start by defining what a problem is, or a very useful way to define what a problem is. A problem is a gap between what is and what should be. And creating that gap drives a high level of creativity and understanding about what it is we're trying to actually do. Because what we're trying to do when we make solutions, or when we find solutions, come up with solutions, trial solutions, is we're trying to find whatever it is that makes that gap smaller. It takes us much closer to be what should be, And so as we get into this, there's a couple really key steps. And I'd like to start by saying that there's a quote applied to, or credited to, Charles Kettering. And I guess he was head of research for General Motors. And the quote is, a problem well stated is half solved. And so what we really want to do, and what frequently doesn't happen in the problem solving world, or in the real world of problem solving, is we need to focus on problem definition. We need to focus on what is and what should be, and understanding and clarifying that gap as best we can. One key way of doing that is understanding what factors drive what is and what factors drive what should be. What factors drive the gap between the two? These are the pieces that we can go tinker with and we can take action on to close the gap. So as we identify what is, I'm going to use an example. I'm going to pick an easy example, or one that could be commonly understood. But when we look at it, this generalized viewpoint of problem solving can be applied to people problems, relationship problems, work problems, life problems. It could really be applied to any problem. I use this technique every day, several times a day, to close gaps that are big and close gaps that are small. There's no real limits to the usefulness of this technique. So as we use it, let's talk through an example. Let's think about weight loss. 2 years ago, 2022, I weighed 275 pounds. It was much heavier than I wanted to be. Now, today, I weigh about 215 pounds. So I was in this place of what is 270 pounds, 275 pounds, to what should be. What I wanted it to be was 220 pounds. And I moved on from there. But that was the initial goal. And so there's this big gap between those two numbers. I define that and I try to understand what factors go into these two states. Typically, they're the same factors for both ends. They're the levers that I can pull or the dials that I can turn that will then ultimately impact those states. So looking at it, I look at three key areas, three key factors. And this is different for every problem that you're going to solve. It's different for every what is that you're going to solve, right? But starting at understanding some of the variables that impact weight. Let's say movement, exercise, and nutrition. So some of the solutions that I can take is I can manage my nutrition, I can manage my exercise, or actually start doing exercise, and I can manage my steps. Now I can also zoom in the scope of this problem down to each one of those factors. If I look at movement, what's my current movement versus what it should be? So at that time, I was probably getting 4,000 steps a day. Wasn't running throughout the week. So what should it be? Well, I started with a goal of 6,000 steps, then moved to 8,000 steps, and moved to 10,000 steps because that was helping me drive the result at the weight level. I was losing more and more weight, so I had to increase my effort. Additionally, exercise. Back then, I had fallen off my exercise program for a couple years during COVID, and so I needed to get back to that. So I started weightlifting 3 to 4 times a week. I went from 0 exercising a week to implementing and doing 3 to 4 exercises a week. So this was what is, this is what should be. I took that action and it started to drive the weight in the right direction. And then lastly was nutrition. And if we zoom in on that problem, it's what was my current intake at that time, which was too much, far too much, let's just say 3,000 calories versus what it should be. And I targeted that down to 2,200 calories, ultimately to help me lose weight. And that was what should be. In each one of these cases, I'm applying the same thought process. And all I'm trying to do is identify what actions can I take to close that gap? What levers can I pull and what dials can I turn to help close that gap? But this can be applied to anything. I apply it every day in all situations. I try to understand what I am seeing right now, what is, and what I would like it to be. And so this isn't just problem solving in the sense of you have an issue and you need to remove the issue. You might have a goal, and really that's all that it is. What should be is just your goal. It's your ideal state, right? So if you take this and you apply this, try it out. It's incredibly useful. Hopefully I explained it in a way. I do want to start to implement some graphics or maybe even just a whiteboard to help me draw. If you can't tell, I like to use my hands, but I also like to draw. But let's just go through this one more time, okay? You want to identify what is, and you want to identify what should be. And then you want to figure out what factors are going to help you close that gap. Think of problem solving in this way, and think of problems as just a gap between those two states, between what is and what should be, and what you can do to help close that gap. I hope this helps. You can't lose if you don't quit.